Hello, welcome to PewTube. I am Kevin Inoue, sole proprietor of Fight Designer LLC and author of the Theatrical Firearms Handbook. I wanted to start off this channel by reviewing some props that are new to me and therefore exciting. These are not brand new though. These are, I've been through a number of shows. These were made by Benaiah Anderson, who's a buddy of mine, who I knew from Colorado. He was in Boulder for ages. He just moved. And was downsizing some of his inventory before he did, which I can understand, having just moved myself. And these are sort of fake muzzle loaders. Here's the thing. Those of us who are doing theatrical firearms props, especially for your live theater, indoor theater, you're doing a Les Mis or something like that, muzzle loaders are a pain. You don't want to have to mess with real black powder. Ideally, it's kind of toxic, noxious smoke. That's explosive. It requires a fairly steep learning curve to be able to load things properly and deal with black powder props the way the reenactors do, whether it's using florist foam or something like that down the barrel as a wadding. If you have any actual wadding, those can fly out and hurt people. So our kind of holy grail for that has been something that could fire blanks but would look like a muzzle loader well enough for live theater. So what a number of people have been doing, and I think Benaiah much more successfully than some of the other companies, is adapting, sort of building fake housing around a blank firing revolver. So I've got two of these sort of black powder flintlock pistol types, and one that is the full-size musket. Now I'll probably need to do some paint touch-ups on these. I have not repainted them yet. But what we've got here is a sort of Eccles Viper 38 blank fire revolver in front vent. These have been very reliable. I've used these for a number of things myself. I tend to like them best of the blank firing revolvers that are out there, just for a combination of factors. The Zeraki ones are nice, but they don't always work with crimp blanks, and I like having the option of using the half load or primer only or quarter load from Western Stage props, and the Zerakis can't really cycle those. There's just not enough space in the back. And the Broodies and the Kimars I'm not as fond of for the most part. Umarex is just too hard to get, too expensive, not worth messing with. So this is really the best choice I think he made here. And then he carved these out of wood and then had, I believe it was Mark Grove, another stage combat guy in the Denver area, mold those and then cast them out of resin. So these are sort of like your resin inert props, with some metal parts as well. So we've got some welded and fabricated metal hardware on these too. So the way that these work, it's not the most convenient, but then again, neither are actual muzzle loaders. So there's just a single screw in each of these with this sort of decorative washer thing, which looks like it was pretty plainly taken off of the fencing foil. And once you undo that, you can lift the revolver straight out. And you can see he's kind of cut these down. He's added an external barrel with a threaded extension there. And these are our standard 38s. You can chamber these crimp blanks or the pistol style ones. Doesn't matter, they've still got the little obstruction halfway through, so the pistol style ones won't fall through. But it gives you a fair amount of flexibility in terms of volume. You can get pretty loud ones, or you can go all the way down to the primer only and just get a little pop, depending on how much of a sound and effects and pyro you want. So these are front venting. The barrel of the revolver does actually kind of end inside this other pipe. So the flash does carry through the barrel. Now these being revolvers, there is always a little spillage around the sides, just because there's always a little bit of a gap here. It's just kind of one of the truths about revolvers, even real revolvers. You don't want to block that off with your hand or something. So one of the issues that I know some of the adapted models have had is just a question of where's the stuff vent? Where's the blank vent? A friend of mine, Jack's down in Chicago, rented some AK-47s that were done in the same style by a company that shall remain nameless in California, that put sort of an AK-47 shaped housing over a blank firing revolver. And those actually vented straight down into the actor's hand. You can see this stuff spilling straight down there. I don't know how serious a safety hazard that is, but it's certainly not something that most actors are going to want to have to deal with. So the good news is these are front vent. They vent down there. There's a little spillage on the side. But as you can see, the walls of this do go up high enough that they're going to catch pretty much anything that comes out of it. So time will tell how durable the housings are. Or any of that. I have not had these very long yet. They're fairly new to me. The other potential challenge with these, I will say, is going to be cleaning them, because especially with a front vent prop, you want to be able to clean the vents, basically, on a regular basis to make sure, because if something does get in here, when it goes off, when it is fired, anything that is in front of it could, to some degree, become a projectile. Now, when we've got as large a bore as this, it's not going to have, unless it's something that really seals it up, it's not going to have a whole lot of forward force. But still, we want to be able to clean it out. And this is big enough that what we're talking about then is taking a 12-gauge swab, like you'd use to clean a shotgun, running that down there, as well as your normal spraying out of the revolver barrel. So it's maybe a little more work in the cleaning. Obviously, these are welded, so there's no actual flint dropping down, making sparks. It's, I wouldn't use this for a film close-up, but that's really not what it's for. This is for live theater, when you're not going to see that kind of close-up shot, but you need something that will go boom. So, once again, I now have 2 of these in stock. These are a mix of steel and resin in 38. Now, the musket's very similar, but this one we've got kind of 2 parts to the front of the stock here. So if you undo, again, just 1 screw, so not that big a deal. Then you can lift this out. We've got separate housing, which, yeah, I should probably repaint a little bit. And then we've got our kind of core. Now this one, the trigger guard, is a part of the decorative housing, not part of the original blank gun. It's been ground off and smoothed off really well. So you can load up your standard 6 shots this way. You could kind of mime the actions of putting a ramrod down if you wanted to. It doesn't have a ramrod chambered with it. But if you had a director who was concerned enough about that sort of accuracy, yeah, you could clean it at the same time. You could put that little 12-gauge bore brush at the end of it, ram that down, pop it up, get another shot off. You can get up to 6 shots off with these before you have to stop and reload them. But, given how long it would take to reload a muzzle loader, I don't think you're likely to have to get more than 6 shots off on stage anyway. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And any playwright who knows anything about live theater would not give you a scene in which you had to fire a muzzle loading firearm 6 times in one scene. That's just kind of insane. So I'm going to go ahead and show you, I'll cut now to a firing test with each of these. At least one of each style. You'll see it does smoke and spark a little bit. Obviously, some of that's going to be more or less visible depending on the lighting and what else is going on stage. But it does give you a decent amount of boom, as those 38s do. So now the other thing I will say, Benaiah has told me he is working on sort of prototyping what the next generation of these might be. This might be something that he ends up going into a more limited production run of. I know that he makes swords. He trained under Denny Graves in Boulder. Makes some lovely sword hilts. But if this becomes a sideline of his, I know that Benaiah is a firearms guy like myself. I look forward to seeing what he comes up with. I think it could be a great addition to the market. Because prior to this, if you wanted something like this, there's equivalents that are made by weapons specialists in New York City, or probably by ISS in LA. There were a couple companies that were making blank firing replicas that were actually much more detailed and would probably hold up a little bit better in film. For reenactment groups in the UK, about 10 years ago, thought about buying one, never got around to it, and was a little worried about importing them. And now they're gone, so that's no longer an option. I think this was before the VCR action. I was seeing them, and now that that's over there, it's gotten a lot harder for companies that are making replicas of any sort of firearms in the UK. So there's limited options out there, and I'm very excited now that Fight Designer LLC can offer these rentals as one possibility for somebody who needs blank firing muzzleloaders. Now I do own a couple of actual cap lock percussions. I find those a lot more convenient than flintlocks. I haven't messed with flintlocks much, to be honest. They are a little more dangerous. You can actually cut yourself. It's a sharp piece of flint. They're less reliable. The spark is much less reliable than a percussion cap. So when I wanted to actually fire something like that on stage before I had these, what I was using was these cap locks. Now the problem with these, of course, well, there's a couple. One, they are designed to fire projectiles. There is nothing modified at all about these to make them not actual firearms. So that just makes it a little sketchy. Now the BATF doesn't consider these firearms in the sense of needing an FFL to ship to. You can send these UPS or FedEx to anyone you want. So they're certainly easier than modern firearms to deal with, but they are still potentially firearms, so you do have to be a little more careful because of that. Unlike with the blank fire-only revolvers where you can't chamber actual ammunition. These use number 11 percussion caps, and then it's just whatever you load down the barrel, be that gunpowder, be that flash cotton, or flash paper, which I find a little too slow burning, or some combination thereof. So these are not, they're not great, but they're an option, and they are what they are. You know, they're not trying to pretend that they're something that they aren't. Which sometimes is a good thing and sometimes is a bad thing, if you know what I mean. And then the one that I have not played with yet in any production, but I think is just fun, and I picked up kind of on a whim. I do also have a, put this together, a duck's feet cap lock pistol. And these were used, the idea was that if you were trying to repel boarders on your ship or something like that, there's a little lock nut that I missed in there somewhere. But the idea is that with one single shot, you could fire 3 projectiles in sort of a spray. So if you had boarders coming onto your ship, you know, pirates were attacking, whatever, you pull one of these, you can take out potentially a whole row, 3 at one shot, and then you toss it aside and draw your cutlass or whatever it is, because that's just how things worked in this time. I think it's kind of a fun gimmick. Like I said, I've yet to play with it. But the mechanism, this base part, until it splits off into the 3 barrels, this part's really just just branches off. But this base part is really no different from where's this one, which I used I think in the Clink when I needed to have a gunshot for that a couple of times. Made a little leather holster for that, but it's, you know, it's basically the same kind of thing. So we have some options, but really for live theater, I'd just really rather not mess with any kind of gunpowder. The flash cotton that I used with that one on the Clink, yeah, only about half the time went off, and so it wasn't that reliable. The number 11 percussion cap is a little too quiet for stage, but if I start adding gunpowder, then it's just sketchier, because you've got to put something to hold it in, and then you've got wadding that's going flying out. This was in a small black box. I didn't want to mess with that, so I just used the percussion cap last time. But those things are even a little bit smaller than the 22 acorn blanks, so you'll get a little pop. You'll know that it happened, but it's not impressive at all. Whereas something like this, you're going to get a pretty hefty boom out of it if you want to, unless you use the primer-only blanks, which you could if you were in a small space and don't want a hefty boom. And as, of course, these are built off the Echo Vipers, it means they are single action or double action, so if you're worried about trigger pull, you can always cock it first and have a fairly light trigger pull. If you want to have a stiffer trigger pull or don't want to have to mess with the cocking action on stage or walk around with it cocked, then you can just pull it from where it is, and it'll fire in double action as well. So, those are my new toys. So check in. My hope with this PewTube channel is to be able to put up content about weekly. I've got a lot of stuff that I've accumulated through Fight Designer LLC, and I'd love to start showcasing some of these oddities that I've collected. It's funny, the market shifts over stuff. Some stuff sticks around, and some that I thought would be around forever has gone away. So some of these things have really become collector's items, which is a mixed blessing. It's kind of cool to have stuff other people don't have, but then you rent it out and you're like, oh, if that disappears, I can't replace it. So, you know, I might as well make a good record of it, and in the meantime, show kind of some of the stuff that I've got here at Fight Designer LLC. So, thanks for visiting PewTube, and I hope you'll check in back in a little bit. Click on the button to subscribe, give it a like, give it a share, whatever you want to do. And while you're at it in social media, check out Fight Designer LLC and the Theatrical Firearms Handbook, both of which have Facebook pages. I share things on there fairly regularly. Not necessarily a lot of original content, but you know, I try to share industry news and reviews and new products, things like that. Thank you. Remember, stay safe.